my best.
It's less. I don't know. I think you got a good chance here. Of X-Men Comic Chat. I'm Rod. This is Keegan, the hook to my Danhausen, my one and only Comega Mutant. This week we are talking X-Men 14, X-Force 31, Knights of X number 5, Gambit number 2. Before we get into it, I have another wait, don't tell me style game for you.
Okay.
Are you ready to play Bluff the Keegan?
Yeah, okay.
All right. I'm going to read you 3 mutant trivia facts. Only one of them is true. You have to figure out the one that actually happened. Are you ready to play?
Yeah, okay. Let's do this. I know I'm newer to all the X-Men stuff, so I am ready to do my best.
It's less I don't know. I think you got a good chance here. All right. It was once canon that Wolverine was a mutant Wolverine instead of human. It was canon that Wolverine was descended from a wolf. It was canon that Wolverine was descended from King Arthur. Which of those was at some point canon?
I want to say that it's King Arthur.
Ooh, I am sorry.
Ah!
You do not win my voice on your voicemail. I don't know. The correct answer is Wolverine is a lupine and thus part of a separate mutant lineage descended from wolves. Other lupines included Sabretooth, Wolfsbane, Wildchild, Feral, and Thorn. You know who you can thank for that? Jeff Loeb. Eventually, they retconned it as a lie made up by Romulus, and so for now, he's Homo Superior again. Interestingly, though, the mutant Wolverine thing was something good old Chris Claremont considered and even hinted at in an issue until John Byrne came in and was like, "No, let's go this other way." So it was a little bit of a trick question in that.
I'm
like,
glad
one
that
of
they
them...
went the other way. I assumed maybe Arthur with all the Avalon and the Knights of X stuff and all that. Maybe
that was what made me throw that one in there, but. The Wolverine one is actually a pretty interesting. If you go back and you read that old issue, I don't remember if it was like a crewman on a ship or something. Reference like, what? You don't have the same DNA, and then like they never brought it up again because that was him planting the first seeds for this mutant Wolverine thing they didn't go with. What did you overall think of this week? Because it was a big week, lots of releases.
Yeah, so I mean, I had fun with this week. I had a lot of fun with X-Men and X-Force.
Yeah,
and I'm very so on Gambit and Knights
we'll
of
get
X
there.
was
I don't know
fun,
that either of us is gonna have a ton to say on Gambit, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and Knights of X was fun, but really the top 2 for me were X-Men and X-Force.
I feel bad we're getting a late record here because I've been sick the whole week. But I feel like the only one we had lots to like text each other about when it first happened was X-Men 14. So do you want to start there?
Yeah, let's start there.
All right, let's jump.
Iceman and Firestar.
So we opened with the rare opening page data page, and it was just a single quote from Iceman, "No more holding back." We see a scene of a reporter arguing with her editor. He wants her to remove the references to Iceman's sexual orientation from a story she's written. We jump back a few hours. Cyclops and Magic are fighting aliens on a ship hovering near the sun. Despite Game World being shut down a few issues ago, these guys hope to still get the bounty for destroying Earth. They take them down, but not before the aliens release a flare generator that sends a dangerous blast towards home. The rest of the X-Men are busy fighting the Eternals, but Cyclops warns Jean about the new priority, and she sets Iceman to work. This leads to some of that like beautiful X-Men synergy as she gives him the boost to orbit, where he starts building a giant ice shield, or I guess more accurately, airbag. Forge calculates the exact size they need to make it. Cyclops and Magic evacuate the International Space Station on the way home, and Firestar, Sync, Jean, and Rogue catch all the debris. Even after they succeed, they immediately have to get back to the battle with the Eternals. But after initially refusing, Bobby agrees to give a statement to the journalist where he explains the parallels between being a mutant and being gay, and explains that he wears his ice form more than his normal form human form these days because he's proud of who he is. The editor caves and lets her publish the story as is, and in the final scene, Cyclops approaches the progenitor in the Arctic. Cyclops announces he doesn't recognize the authority of the Celestial, and that only Jean and his fellow X-Men can judge him. The Celestial hesitates, then throws up the thumbs up. Cyclops grins and announces, if you keep that thumb up, we don't have to meet again.
God, I loved this issue.
So 2 issues ago, we had a kind of long conversation about it doesn't feel like the first issue for a new team.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first issue for the new team. I don't know why we double shipped and why we got the other issue first, but this was an awesome demonstration of why this group needed to be a team.
I agree completely. This really felt more complete. Everyone got their show, their due. We got the really good team dynamics. It was
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, we got the power dynamics and the banter dynamics that I felt were lacking in the last one.
Yeah, well, I mean, this time we didn't have Avengers references every time.
Every time Firestar spoke, yeah, this was fantastic. Like for all my before, I was saying I don't know if I have faith in Jerry Dugan. I have faith in Jerry Dugan. This was a fun as hell issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there was 2 main stars. Well, really, everyone got their moment to shine. But do you want to talk Iceman or do you want to talk Cyclops first?
I say let's start Iceman. I want to save Scott for the end of this.
That is totally fair. So we've seen a few times in the recent past, like they just did an Infinity series where we saw Bobby really addressing the parallels between his homosexuality and being a mutant and how both have isolated him in different ways. I think this might have been the best presentation of that I've read.
Mm-hmm. Incredibly good.
I feel like having it teed up in the kind of flash forward, or I don't know if you want to consider everything else a flashback, but the framing device of seeing the editor saying no and then getting his actual speech in data page form at the very end after seeing him originally not want to even give the speech. I thought it was really poignant, really beautiful, was really well done.
Absolutely, like incredibly well done. Like you said, very beautiful. The truest testament to how important the data pages are to these books. Like,
Absolutely.
just like the best form of like, this is why you need to read them and they're not just text on a page to take care of something.
It feels weird when he gave us Krakoa, but the best thing Jonathan Hickman gave the X-Men might be the data pages. Like it gives everything in this line a different feel and a cohesion. It ties them all together.
It's such a cool idea that's so simple, like in what it actually is. I'm surprised I haven't seen it used more often in other books.
So we said talk Iceman first. How about just the badassness of what he does?
So cool. I was so into that. I mean, just like you said, with how the team dynamics were really formed around this moment, but like just so good with the forming of the pillow or the cloud, whatever you want to call the shield.
Well, and almost like the casualness of his dialogue that he shows up. She's like, "I need you,"
that, like,
and he shows up. He's like, "What's
film,
up?" Oh, there's a extinction level event coming. Oh, okay. He goes up and he just starts making this ice. Yeah, I mean, he refers to it as an airbag, but whatever you want to call it, it would just be perfect for that. I liked when they all were doing the last part of it, the catching it, and Rogue shows up and didn't you just leave this team? And once an X-Men, always an X-Men. That was a really cool moment.
I love that. That actually really that hit a specific thing that always itches my brain the right way. Being so into Power Rangers and all that kind of stuff, and there's the continual concept of once a Ranger, always a Ranger, and these old Rangers returning from old seasons to help out the new Rangers. It played on that for me, and I was just like, yeah, let's go.
I know you're a big Forge guy.
I like Forge a lot, and I liked seeing like him work this time, and we didn't have to really worry about any questionable dialogue choices or any of that.
That is fair. It slipped my mind that we had the kind of questionable dialogue last time. Yeah, I felt like that was a really good use of Forge, that he got to be the big problem solver, but he's also just chilling on the beach essentially. That's who Forge is supposed to be. That he's still a big hero of the day, but he's nowhere near what's actually going on.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Literally walking down the beach with a sandwich in hand, being like, all right, so here's my calculations, Iceman. What's up?
Which is doubly funny when you remember, like, it's not just this conflict he's ignoring, but also crap going on. And
that's the thing. It's like everyone is just so casually like, yeah, we got this, while they are interrupted in one cataclysmic event for another cataclysmic event.
Yeah, they literally have to be like, all right, Eternals, hold on a second. We'll be back.
It's like, you can't purge us of the Earth if there's no Earth to purge. So, one sec.
You want to talk Cyclops?
Let's get with it.
Can we ever question Cyclops was right again?
I don't think that we can. And, here's the thing. This is tough for me to admit. I have not always been a Cyclops was right guy. My friend and I used to have a joke where we called him Scott Scummers.
To be fair, they wanted us to feel like he was a villain. Like, that was like Marvel's MO throughout the 2010s. So it's okay that you felt that way. But
no, absolutely. And like, I understand that I was tricked, okay? Like, but I feel like now I have to forever retire calling him Scott Scummers, even when I'm in a petty mood, because it's just so cool.
The Scott Emma people were upset by the way he phrased it because he didn't mention Emma, which I feel like that's lumped in when who he was with at a given time, whether it was Madeline. Like, I feel like Jean has always been number one in his heart. So I feel like the actual dialogue was exactly in character, saying, Jean's the only one who can judge me. Well, her than the rest of the X-Men.
I agree. Like, yeah, I mean, that and like the whole Logan of it all, and it's just like, it's Jean. It's always been Jean. It'll always be Jean.
Well, especially now with Krakoa, though. I feel like they've really drilled that home. Like, I mean, yeah, they've had the whole polyamorous thing where we've seen her hooking up with Wolverine. Stepping aside from Cyclops for a second, they doubles, triples, quadruples down on the judgment is how you fulfill your own expectations of yourself thing, though.
It absolutely does. As I was reading that, I was like, yo, okay, so like that is the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can see it Celestial had to digest what was happening, but it was an easy thumbs up once he realized just what Cyclops was saying.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, all right, I'll be judged, but I don't recognize your authority. I love that last page. Right, of him walking away from the progenitor with the thumbs up.
Oh, it feels that like cool guys walking away from explosions, like primordial part of our brain, just to see him walking away with that grin. It nailed it.
It absolutely did. Well, and not to mention, like the whole issue itself opens up with an incredibly cool moment from Cyclops as he's shooting the helmets off of these dudes and being like, "Yeah, I had practice."
Speaking of those helmets, why do they have Nova helmets? This isn't quite Rod's nitpick corner, but one, the Nova helmets do nothing. Was that a Game World thing I missed? Did they like beat up a bunch of Nova people? Like, are these aliens we've seen before and I didn't realize? Or
if they are, I didn't realize it either.
Okay.
My take on it is just like they're scavvers, and it's something they've scavenged from like some wreck or something like that.
That's fair.
They came across a wreck. They're like, "Oh, these helmets are cool. They make us look like a gang."
I want to discuss this cover.
Yes, let's do it.
Was this cover of Cyclops in shackles just like a leftover from a different version of what this issue is going to be? Or is there some symbolism I'm not seeing? Because he's literally got a bag over his head and he's in complete like Orcus style shackles.
That's something I've been trying to figure out too. And I'm not quite sure. It might be leftovers.
Here's the other
hard
thing.
To say.
I'm gonna pull up real quick so it'll be dead air, but the solicitation for this issue was also super off. Let me read it to you real quick. Was Cyclops right? An Axe tie-in? Are any of the X-Men right? Only one can judge them, and the day of judgment is here, for good or ill, and the newest team of X-Men must face the truth about themselves and what they've done. This, like, the progenitor didn't come in until the end.
Do you think maybe we're off by one? Kind of thing? Like, that's going to be the next issue now?
I could see that. I could see that, like, maybe maybe Dugan saw, which I don't know how, like, they couldn't be drawing the issues that quickly, but maybe he realized he didn't nail it with the first tie-in, and that's why we got these two in quick succession.
That could be.
Maybe you're right.
I mean, it could even be like a real. They had to chop and screw a couple of ideas together, and now their like issues are made up of like 2 to 3 different issues that have been put together.
I'm starting to feel like this event, as amazing as even these tie-ins have been, is very much broken down into the stuff Kieran Gillen himself is doing and like the stuff everybody else is doing. Minus Al Ewing. Like Red is obviously amazing, but like there's a degree to which that everything he's doing himself, which is like half of the issues, but everything Kieran Gillen is doing seems much more tied to the core plot than any of the looser tie-ins.
I'd have to agree because like all of the other ones that aren't Red and Gillen stuff are just kind of there. You know, oh, okay, the progenitor is here for like 2 pages. Now we're done.
Well, that's this issue, as fun as it was very much a, oh, you're in the middle of this, but instead go fight this fight, and then you can come back to it. And like we're gonna talk X-Force, that's very much what X-Force like. They're all in the trappings of Judgment Day, but they don't seem to really have anything to do with Judgment Day.
Yeah, I will say that like I think what makes it work for X-Men is that it is part of that story. It's the
Absolutely.
an X-Man's work is never done, right?
Absolutely,
And you can never rest.
I would 100% say this is the issue along those lines that's worked the best in, like, and it works for this team. But it definitely does fall. Like there's clearly 2 categories here, and since we're moving into weeks that have like 6 or 8 issues that are tied into this event for the next few weeks, I'm really starting to hope that more fall into the actually matter camp than the don't matter camp. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see because it's hard to tell. If the ones that don't matter that much stay as good as this one, then I'm okay with it.
Exactly. I'm not saying I'm not gonna like it. There's a real tightness to the Gillen issues where like I feel like every page matters. So I'm hoping that we can keep the percentage of those high. Okay, one last one, just because I thought it was cute. In the scene where Bobby's giving the interview, did you notice the God Hates Muties like protester? And Magic is standing behind him with a Sharpie writing "Magic was here" on his sign.
Yes, that was very good. I loved that.
This should prove no great difficulty for Kraven the Hunter.
Force 31, we see Kraven the Hunter, more accurately, the clone of Kraven the Hunter, travel across the Arctic to confront the Celestial. Omega Red brings the entire ship of trafficked mutants from the last issue to Krakoa, much to the ire of Beast, who wanted them delivered somewhere more visible for PR reasons. He also makes it really clear he doesn't think all mutants should be welcome on Krakoa anymore. Sage argues now more than ever they need to welcome everyone. Beast then has a data page about how maybe he alone should be in charge of Krakoan security. Kraven is upset when the Celestial ignores him and turns his attention back to the mutants. Drunk Sage shows Omega Red the Shadow Room and explains it's basically the Star Trek holodeck for playing out whatever sick fantasies he has. Kraven is in a cabin with Deadpool's head mounted on the wall, but they have a confrontation when he starts to reassemble himself. Deadpool lets it slip that he can work the Krakoan gates, and Kraven sets off for the nearest gate. At least this one ties into Judgment Day, since the last issue didn't at all.
Yeah, like this one, just like with X-Men, it like ties into Judgment Day, but just kind of. And I feel like this one even less consequentially than X-Men, personally.
Can Beast ever be redeemed at this point, though?
I mean, he's kind of just a villain now.
He's literally using the undesirables type rhetoric. Like,
yeah. Not only that, but he's like you said, he's the only one that can run it. Not only is he the only one that can run security in his mind, he wants to clone himself so that there's multiple of him running the security.
What's it going to take for the Quiet Council to intervene? because that's directly going against their vision of that's like the idea is everyone's welcome.
I mean, it really it plays into the whole Charles selectively enforcing.
Yeah.
You know, it's bad. It's getting bad, but like in a compelling way, of course. But
Yeah, no, bad for them, great for
Yeah,
us. It's great
great-
drama.
great storytelling. I live for the drama. Wow, Beast is awful.
Well, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, after Sins of Sinister, like, I don't know that we're gonna be able to move right to the Orcus plot because we're gonna have to have a Dark Beast story. Well, is this Beast worse than Dark Beast now? Like, we had a character named Dark Beast, but this guy's probably darker than that at this point.
I mean, the ick that was like coming across me in waves as the more he talked, like first of all, for him to even start with like, well, we're not going to get enough publicity out of this, so what good does it matter? I'm just like, what is going on
Well,
here?
and if you look back, this is the flip of the last issue, where like if you remember, Sage was the one arguing like, no, we should go for PR reasons, and Beast was the one saying like they shouldn't even like, no, they shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
For him to be the one only focused on PR, now that it's lives that matter and not like security, he's flipped, and now PR is his priority.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, he had such a great idea that no one else ever thought of, right?
Like that it's the Russian ship, and we have like the brewing Russian conflict in his mind, so he just wants to dump their mutants back. It's very like resembles real world dick politician move. Like
Mm-hmm.
Beast is a dick politician at this point.
Oh, absolutely, he is. Which I mean, played up for an incredible data page from Colossus.
Yeah.
That was so good. What is it? It is my understanding, Beast, that you're upset about the Russian refugees who arrived recently on our shores. I advise you to keep this position to yourself. Note that if you were to take action against them, say if any are deported or happen to go missing, you should expect a most unwelcome visit from me.
I don't know who's gonna get to finish off the Colossus Russian story with his brother being able to control him, but they need to move that plot forward. I need to see some payoff there because we need more Colossus in our books.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss him.
Well, we keep getting little glimpses of him. We got a little bit of him in New Mutants. We're getting a little bit of him here, but it's not enough. I need him.
I need some more. Hopefully, this is the play that brings him back in.
Moving across our mental health happy hour here, Sage. Who's gonna talk her into some rehab here?
Sage is a mess.
Like she's not only like fallen deep off the alcoholic like bandwagon, or and it's been a good slow burn, but at this point, like the only character she relates to is Omega Red, the only person she can confide in. That's
when you and Omega Red are enabling each other.
Like, I would never encourage anyone to be codependent on anyone, but that's probably the last person you want to be codependent with.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like top 5 worst choices you could make.
Like if you have to jump into that codependency, make the right choice.
Yeah. There's a few that you say no to. You say no to Omega Red. You say no to Sabretooth.
Talking about Omega Red, do we want to talk holodeck? Because I don't know the rules of the Shadow Room, but like,
I mean, so it is the holodeck. Let's be honest.
right? Yeah. So
I just
does someone have to come and clean the blood, or
right? What's happened? I mean,
is there no surveillance? Because I would think Beast would have that thing cammed up just because he's King Paranoia.
You would think, right? But also, like, if it's supposed to be a thing where like no one else can see what you're doing, I mean, surely what it has to be is the great lie is that it's safe and no one can know what you're doing.
Right, and someone's gonna notice. Yeah,
someone knows.
that's fair.
that I'm worried about that one. That's going to be interesting to see, especially like however sick Omega Red decides to get with it.
Yes. Well, and how graphic are they really going to show us, or is it going to be all telling us how bad it is? Like,
Right.
this is really becoming a mental health like tour de force book, and I'm hoping to handle it with some delicate hands because they're moving into some dark territory on some real world. Not so much Omega. I guess Omega Red is a sociopath, but like with a Sage specifically, they're moving into some real world like problems that people have. So I hope they handle it with some delicate touch.
Yeah, at least a little bit of grace.
I remember last. Did this just come out 2 weeks ago, or was this three? However long ago the last one was. I remember last time we talked about this book. You weren't the biggest fan of the Craven stuff. How did you feel about Craven here?
Um, I still, it's good enough. I find it interesting, but it's not grabbing me in any type of way. I'm finding the Beast stuff and the Omega Red stuff far more interesting than the
That's
Craven stuff.
That makes sense. I think the Craven stuff's grabbing me a little bit more. Especially, I really liked how much we're seeing him conflicted with himself, or like seems like the majority of his drive at this point is the fact he's a clone. And I've always thought it. I always thought that was a lazy storytelling device. That they basically didn't want to undo Craven's last hunt, but they wanted a similar version of Craven to that. So they just made a clone who never went through Craven's last hunt. So now they could have old school Craven back. But it seems like he's going to really be dealing with and addressing and figuring himself out in this being a clone situation. And I liked that the Celestial ignored him. Whether that is the Celestial ignores everyone that's below a certain stature, if it only reacts when it wants to. We know it reacts sometimes because it just last issue we talked about it responded to Cyclops walking up. Or does it not acknowledge clones? Does it not acknowledge villains? Like we don't know why it didn't acknowledge him, but
Right. That was one thing that I was kind of curious about because what are the rules of it being a clone? Because if you're really semantically trying to break it down, what is any different about Clone Craven versus a rebirthed mutant?
this is fair.
Like,
That's
it's not the original body, it's a mind implanted into a new body.
I wasn't going to bring that up quite yet, but I had thought about the fact that Cyclops is technically a clone at this point,
Right.
and like in multiple ways. But he's how many bodies has he gone through on Krakoa? He's probably the most revived.
Right. And that's my curiosity with it. It's like, okay, how do these rules differ? Why is it that Craven is not? Is it because of the clone or is there something else?
Yeah, we don't know because he didn't speak up at all. We know that it seemed like that's what Craven was like believing it was. He was worried that he wasn't good enough, pure enough, or whatever. And it's what lit the fire under his ass.
No sweat.
Knights of X number 5, I am fully convinced this was originally going to be an ongoing, and these plot threads were not supposed to be crammed into one issue. Here we go. Gambit is dead. King Arthur is dead, apparently. Invaders turned the Siege Perilous into an entire realm. Apparently, since Gambit tried the death card on Merlin, and that card actually means change, Gambit isn't dead, but it's in the giant house of cards in the middle of the Siege Perilous. Weird they didn't notice that sooner. Arthur pulls Mordred into a cauldron. The rest of the adventure party heads deep into the House of Cards, come across this long series of like Gambit statues showing different versions of the character. The warped version of Wrong Slide, attacks. They figure out it's a vision of the character, not like the actual one who's currently on Krakoa. It's a manifestation of Gambit's fear that if he's resurrected after dying in Otherworld, he's going to come out a grotesque, warped monster, like we've been told the rules are. Then Gambit, in his role as Death, the Horseman of the Apocalypse, arrives. There's this like quick fight where Betsy and Sunfire successfully restore him, which opens this portal, allows Rogue and 100 more X-Men to come barreling through, and combined, they defeat all of the evil Otherworld forces in a single 2-page spread. Then they all go home. We find out that with that spell broken, the whole other world messes up resurrection rule. Done, gone. Arthur and Mordred deal with whatever off screen, and they get to rule together. Betsy and Rachel share a romantic kiss. Finally, Betsy settles the three-way feud between Roma and Merlin by announcing that the Captain Britain Corps doesn't need any of them and sentences Merlin to death. Then she and the rest of the Corps join Rachel on a trip into the multiverse. Did I miss anything?
I mean, I think you got it all, but also so much happened. Probably.
I liked Excalibur.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of dug Knights of X. This issue was possibly the most rushed as hell finale I have ever read in my life.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it as it was probably originally planned to be an ongoing, but really like thinking of it from that angle and looking at issue 5, it has to have been.
The biggest offender, other than the entire fight being 1 2-page spread and not getting any dialogue, no like what actually happens, just seeing there was a fight. But the biggest offender to me is having the Arthur and Mordred stuff all happen off panel.
Yeah.
Like,
a lot of it felt like a lot of it was like this happened, and before anyone could ask why, it was because.
Absolutely, it was somehow both very heavy on exposition and exposited. I don't know if that's a word. Explained nothing. Like,
yeah, incredibly dense yet incredibly thin.
some of the like internal logic made no sense. Like there was a point where they were explaining that the Death Guard means change, and of course the Siege Perilous means change for mutants. Like that's not how it's ever functioned. That's not what the Siege Perilous does for mutants, and we've seen it 4 or 5 times since the 80s, and usually it's just like a torture. Like it does terrible things. It doesn't provide change. It just seemed like
that one really confused me.
I'm pretty sure everything was just being crammed into as few pages as they could make it fit, and it was to the detriment of what has been like a 4-year-long story. Like Excalibur launched right at the end of House of X, so we're talking 3.5 full years of this unbroken story. That it took a short break at the end of Excalibur, heading into Knights of X, and other than that, it's been one long story that we just got this. Let's just wrap it up. I hated it. I didn't hate the issue, but I hated that's how it went. Like,
right. It deserves more respect than what it got at the end of the day.
Can I ask you something kind of weird?
Yes.
Have you read Boom's Once and Future at all?
I have not, although I keep meaning to pick it up. It looks interesting.
Okay, so I just binged it recently. It ends next month, so I'm going to be making a big push for people to catch up before it ends, because I think it's one that's worth like being on the I'm reading it while it's out bandwagon.
Yeah.
But it's Kieran Gillen writing basically if Arthurian legends were made real, but it works in a similar rule to what they talk about here of like you have to play out the story. So by the end of Once and Future, or where the story is at now, there is at least 3 separate King Arthurs, all from different versions of the story that have all been manifested by different people believing in what's going on. And like the monster hunters are trying to fulfill the roles of the characters, and there's tons of stuff going on in it. But it just strikes me that it's Kieran Gillen who's running the X office, writing essentially a better version of this story, and I couldn't stop thinking that reading this. Like as you got like as the Siege Perilous talk happened and visiting the Cauldron and like all of these story beats that I just happened to be reading in Once and Future because I've been binging that to catch up with it. And it would be one thing if there was just a better version of this story out there, but the fact that it's Kieran Gillen just cracks me up and makes it that much harder for me that this ended the way it ended.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, that would be really upsetting when someone involved in the overarching of the project is doing a better job. not to call it a side gig just because it's an indie comic, but like at a side gig. You know what I mean?
Not Rod's Nitpick Corner. I feel bad. I didn't have a single Rod's Nitpick Corner. Well,
Yeah.
you know that was the segment everyone's here for.
You have like, at least 3 half corners, so we're there.
What happens to Wrong Slide?
I don't know.
Like, they say, hey, this doesn't happen anymore. If you get revived over there, you go back to your normal self. But Wrong Slide, part of his shtick was he had that whole speech where he talked about like he's okay with who he is now. That he knows he's not that guy, but he likes him who he is. So do they revive Rocks? Like, if Wrong Slide dies, does he come back as Wrong Slide? Does he come back as Rock Slide? Do they make Rock Slide come back as a separate entity now?
That's a great question. I mean, so I guess does Rock Slide even still exist in that form?
This is a good question. Is the rule retroactive, or that's a good point? You know what it makes me think of? Did you ever watch Star Trek Voyager?
No.
Okay. So it has this episode where 2 members of the crew get merged into one character, but that new character has its own personality and like it wants to continue to live, but to bring back the original 2 people, they have to essentially kill it, and the captain has to make the call. It's the merge character is basically begging, "Let me stay alive, let me exist," and the captain has to make the call of like, "No, we're gonna." And there's this big debate among the fan community of like, was that the right call? Like, because the 2 characters like dying wasn't an active choice made by the captain, whereas like killing him was an active choice. And
Right.
this makes me think of that. It's the same moral dilemma of like, is Rock Slide valid? Or is Wrong Slide valid? Are both valid or neither valid? And I mean, the obvious answer is probably what you said of just, well, he's just not available anymore. Or another obvious answer could be, well, they could just make multiple husks and we could let both entities continue to exist. But I'm curious to see if it ever gets addressed, and if it is, how.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I hope we get some sort of explanation of it, some way, shape, or form. Aside from maybe that's rough, buddy, to Wrong Slide.
So the Wrong Slide like scene was in like the first X-Men Red, right? That was a Ewing thing, or am I remembering wrong?
That sounds right.
Okay, so it might be dealt with there. I don't know. We will find out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see what happens. And for as much that was packed into this issue, and like there was a lot, and they didn't spend enough time on any of it, it all looked really cool.
Oh yeah, the visuals are, that 2-page spread I keep insulting.
Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah, it was like a really cool two-page spread. It just was the entire fight.
Well, yeah, the entire now contextless fight where we don't know anything about it. And since I brought up the other cover, I do love that gorgeous cover.
Yeah.
I am totally cool with the Saturnine, Roma, and Merlin feud being over, Merlin being dead, and for the ladies to just be gone. The end specified Captain Britain will be back, not any of the rest of it. So if we just get like a swashbuckling Captain Britain's book out of this, I think I'm okay with this ending, because I do love Betsy as Captain Britain.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be good. I'd like that.
Just to show the amazing 2-page spread. It is gorgeous. You've got both Wolverines there. You got Juggernaut. You've got a huge cast of. You got Legion. So there we go. Rod's Nitpick Corner. When the holy hell does this story take place?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when does this supposed to take place?
Like, it was enough to have Rogue show up, but even Wolverine, this can't be during Judgment Day, because we know Wolverine's pouting through Judgment Day.
Right.
And then Legion is, we think, dead. We're not going to really know until X-Men Red comes out, but something's going on with him. He got taken out, at least.
He is presumably dead or heavily incapacitated.
Yeah. Good. We got one in.
We got one in there.
We got one in.
All right.
Here, pick a card.
Gambit 2. It was a book. It was a Chris Claremont book.
Yep. It was a comic book that I read.
Honestly, I like the way he writes young Aurora.
Yeah.
I think that's literally all I have to say on it.
Honestly, I have like so little to say about it. It just I don't know. Like, what am I supposed to feel about it at this point? We're past this, you know?
Yeah. Last week we introduced a new segment, Fan Question of the Week. Every week we ask a question, solicit community answers either in the comments here on our TikTok or in an email to us at arakopublicradio@gmail.com. Last week's question, in honor of Sins of Sinister and the possibility that this is his alternate future story, what villain would you want to see? And from TikTok, our buddy, the Comic Concierge, threw out there, Arcade. Imagine all of Marvel living in a giant video game.
I like that one. That one's fun. The idea of Arcade winning.
I will admit, I had not had that one cross my mind in the slightest, and ever since he said it, that's all I could think about. That would be an amazing crossover, and I feel like the variant covers would be fantastic. Like, I'm just in it for all the covers at this point. I want that to exist.
So, okay, if this were to be like an event arc where Arcade wins, what if they called it Ready Player X?
I love it.
I think
so
that would be
good.
fun.
That is fantastic. And then the other one I wanted to highlight for maybe less positive reasons. On our Gmail, we got Steve Jones simply said Magneto. Thank you for sending that in, Steve, but I have to question, is Magneto even a villain?
I mean, I don't think he is anymore by any means.
Like, I obviously, like, with Krakoa, most of the villains aren't villains, but like, I don't think you could tell a Magneto is a villain story anymore. Like, I just don't think you could go back to it.
I don't think we could, especially with the X-Men cartoon that they're gonna restart is gonna have Magneto like leading the team. I think we've reached a point where he is no longer a villain and we cannot make villain stories with him.
I think you can maybe do one MCU where it's the flashback is him as a villain, but that is the full extent to me that you can have Magneto as a villain this day and age.
I agree completely.
All right. What about you? You said you had a good answer. I'm interested.
I have a very good answer, a very stupid answer, and I feel like you might like it because of a DC book that you're into right now.
Oh.
And let's, you know what, a little bit of brand synergy given what else came out this week in the streaming television world. I would like to see Sauron win.
Oh, okay.
And so everyone gets turned into dinosaurs, so we got some Jurassic League kind of thing going on, but with mutants. I think it would be fun. Very stupid, but very fun.
No, I am just picturing a Velociraptor with Cyclops' visor, and I am in. You have sold me, and I am in.
There we go.
Wow, I love it so much.
Yeah, I just, that's the one.
We gotta make, but you know what? We gotta write Kieran Gillen and get him to write in rapid succession, like the Arcade one and that one, and then he can do whatever else he wants. But those two need to be plucked. Next year could just be the year of villains win like 3 times in a row. That
would be a fun one. Not Ready Player. Wow, a One Bad Day, but for the X-Men.
Ooh, except I want a full crossover for each. I don't want just one story.
Yes, absolutely, a full crossover, but of that same kind of concept where it's like that villain at their highest peak.
I love it. My answer was nowhere near as fun, but I was thinking about it because of her appearances in Marauders lately. I think seeing a future dystopia that's like Cassandra Nova's vision would be really cool, but that's probably the Grant Morrison fanboy in me.
And you know what? I mean, they're one of the all-time greats for a reason.
Absolutely. All right, and then for this week's question, we are keeping it simple. If you could steal one DC character and make them an X-Men, who would it be?
That'll be a fun one.
I think we'll get some good
I'm
ones.
so excited for this one.
I'm excited to see what people say.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for the week that we're reading? Now it's this week because, like I said, I was
Right.
sick. We're doing late record. But
Reading
for
in,
what
like,
we're
a couple
reading
days.
Wednesday, what we're reading in 3 days. Wolverine 24, Immortal X-Men number 6, Marauders number 6, Axe Death to Mutants number 2, New Mutants 29, and probably in that Gambit slot where we won't talk about it much, but I'm going to read it, X-Men and Moon Girl number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'll read all of them too. I'll get on that X-Men and Moon Girl, but we got 4 Axe tie-ins.
Yep. I'm shocked New Mutants still isn't a tie-in, actually, but I think New Mutants is going to be important.
I agree.
There's also, if any of the listeners are trying to keep up with us, I'm probably going to end up talking She-Hulk a little because Nightcrawler's on the cover, so I think it's going to be a crossover where Nightcrawler's going to show up. Nightcrawler was also in the new Damage Control last week or 2 weeks ago, and I didn't talk about it. It was a nice cameo, but it was just a cameo.
Yeah.
You know what's not on this list? What's still not on this bleep list? X-Men Red. Where the hell is X-Men Red?
I need to know what's happened with that hour of Magneto real bad. I'm starting to itch for it.
We have legit got 2 Marauders, 2 Wolverines, maybe 3 New Mutants since we got the last X-Men Red. I am at my wit's end.
Didn't Immortal X-Men also come out like around the same time as Red?
It was either the same day or the week after, yeah.
Yeah, so we might have even gotten 2 Immortals now since.
Yep. Yeah. So, I think that does it for us for this week.
Yeah.
Thank you for hanging out and chatting all things mutant with us. If you haven't, hit subscribe. Follow us on the socials. I'm that nerdy Papa Bear. Keegan is Bulk Ranger on Twitter and TikTok. And
excuse me, but shouldn't we be busy protecting the fragile peace between humans and mutants?